Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all in another interesting task webinar. And today we have Professor H.S. Shalindra with us, who has over 27 years of experience in teaching, training, research, consultation, and academic administration. He recently participated in the farmers' protest taking place in Delhi NCR and gathered some unadulterated first-hand information, which is very difficult to get in this social media driven world. We are glad to have you here, sir. Now, I would request sir to take the stage and shed some light on this burning issue, farm laws and farmers' agitation. So,
Yeah, thank you, Ayush. Good afternoon, all of you. Yeah, thanks for participating in this seminar. Of course, I am not an expert. I thought I will share some of my thoughts on this topic. As Ayush mentioned, I did visit the agitation site and also participated in the rally, more as a social scientist and as a researcher, right? So, though I have been following what has been happening since last 6 months or so, right? These farmers have been agitating, though in the last 2 months it has intensified. So my own concern or kind of feeling was also getting intensified. What is happening? So why are we not responding like that? So, and then in the TV also we could see there was a lot of debate, a lot of sensationalization of some of the events, and also some of the things that are there as part of the agitation. So I thought that I myself will just go there and then get some first-hand idea. Of course, just a visit will not help, but still to feel the feel the reality there, whatever was there, because the farmers were staying there in the bitter cold of Delhi for almost two months, right? Even that was sort of moving me, right? How could they stay in this kind of bitter winter and fight for their cause? What and all must be happening like that? So all of those issues made me go to the agitation, go to the rally, and also stay in their campus or camp, whatever campus or campus. It has become literally a big campus in both the places I went, Singhu border and Tikri border, extending over 15-20 kilometers, right? Vast stretch of area. Everywhere you will see tractors and tents. Right. Yeah. So I thought I'll just stay also to feel as to how sort of they are sort of experiencing their own daily life apart from agitating. And much more than that, also understand this news movement, right? Farmers movement, which has come up in this context, right? In this conjecture of our history, as to why it has come up possibly. So what are some of the issues underlying these agitation? So what has been the response of different actors, farmers or state, right? And also people like us, right? So several people are also writing with certain perspectives, etc. So basically it was to understand and then share this with audience like this, right? IRMA audience. Of course, I did also write a field note, and which I shared it also with our IRMA community sometime back, a week ago, right? So this is just to share my insights that I have gathered. This is not any research based work, right? So I would rather say that this is again a kind of a discussion that I want to initiate on this, right? We at IRMA, we are supposed to be looking at issues concerning farm development, agriculture development, rural management, etc. So we can't be sitting idle. We can't be oblivious of whatever is going on, right, in the country. So we need to take note of them and then respond in whatever way. So this is therefore a small attempt in that direction, a small attempt in that direction of initiating discussion and debate here at IRMA. Though larger debate is also going on there, and we should be participating in some way, contributing to even to the larger debate. Yeah. So about the content, right? As possibly you may be seeing my slide. So my content presentation. So broadly there will be six aspects. I will start with some photos of the campus. Sorry, so I'm forced to say campus. We live on campus. So the camp, farmers camp, right? Photos of the agitation and the camp. And then, of course, I will start off with as to what has triggered this agitation and what is the rationale or arguments of the government, given, of course, the farmers' agitation, and what underpins these agitation, and also the government's response in the way it has responded through these acts. Of course, government is also responding in several other ways. There is also political dimension to this agitation. Even certain law and order issues have come up. It has got sensationalized and it has become a global kind of an issue with several celebrities participating. Anyway, those are all going on TV. We can follow them. So, but I thought that here I would try and go into some of the basic issues, fundamental issues, right? So therefore, I would like to understand what are the underpinnings of this agitation, so the larger issues, and how they are possibly influencing the agitation, and make an assessment of the government's approach, right? So in formulating these laws, and also in terms of the content of the laws and implications of these laws, make an assessment, and also make an assessment of the farmers' demand, right? They are demanding several things, including MSP, which has become the major bone of contention between government and the farmers, right? So make an assessment and then possibly identify as to how various actors or how the nation can move forward, right? In terms of taking this debate, right? And addressing the farmers' concerns, right? So therefore, these are the issues that I'm going to discuss. So please feel free to chip in at any time to ask any question or any point that you want to make. As I said that I am not here to, in some sense, though I have made some analysis and I may share my own perspective or understanding, but let us debate. That is my, as I said, that is the purpose. So please come in at any time, in any way, any form, either by way of some comment, oral comment, or even comments or questions on the chat box. Okay, so let me just quickly first go through some photo images, right? Yeah, so it was interesting to be there. Of course, I have participated in farmers' agitation earlier also, farmers' rally, long back when I was a student, if not in the recent past. Right, when I was a PhD student, those days also, right, in 80s also farmers' agitations were there. So I used to participate, and where I was studying in Bangalore was also a hotbed of some of the major farmers' agitations that took place in Karnataka. So after that, this was possibly the second time I have participated in a farmers' agitation. Right, yeah, as the images themselves show, right, of course, their demand and the way they are agitating, the forms that they are adopting. Of course, even tractor has become a major symbol, right? As we can see, tractor has become a major symbol, though they were also using this traditional symbol of wooden plow, right? Though this kind of a contrasting thing was there, but tractors were prominent there. Though some are branding it as tractor farmer rallies, these are maybe better off farmers. Those kinds of arguments have also come. But this traditional symbol was also being used, and the modern symbol, tractors, were also there in plenty. Right, and of course, women also were participating. Women were there in the rally. Women are also there in the camps so that have been started. And these are some of the glimpses of the camps, right? So typical tents, right, using tarpaulin or plastic kind of sheets, right? So, and of course, langars are common there because a lot of Punjabi farmers are there. Langars is one of their cultural kind of, again, a cultural symbol and part of their livelihood. So langars are there throughout, all over, right? And this is the langar in which I was, the tent in which I was there, right? And yeah, these kinds of typical scenes, tents, right? A variety of tents, bigger ones, smaller ones, and even the tractors themselves converted into some kind of a smaller mini tents or houses. In variety of ways they are living as per their convenience and as per the resources that they have got. But one thing is common, that there is some kind of a collective effort. These are all local, in the tents. There is some collective groups, right? These are all farmers from nearby villages. They have come together. and then mobilize resources, right? Of course, though they are saying tractor farmers, not all have come by tractors. Those who have tractors nearby, they have come in tractors and others have joined them in their tractors. So it is like that, right? So in the tent in which I was there were 106 farmers or 107 farmers, but about 4 or 5 tractors were there. Not that therefore all have come by tractors, that it is a tractor owner farmers, they are holding rally like that. You know, even small farmers, even in several cases, laborers are also supporting and participating. So that part, possibly media is not taking note of this. In fact, in Singhu border, so there is a major site stage also platform where both Kisan and Mazdoor organization, they are separately organizing their agitation also, apart from the farmers, right? So therefore, laborers, as mobilized by some of the unions, which are very particular about now working with laborers, so they are also present. So but those kinds of composition and features are not coming out in generally in the media. So I was therefore curious also to look at the therefore this kind of composition, including gender also. Good number of women are there, and interestingly, of course, as I was telling, that they have sustained this for such a long time, and they say that we are going to be there for some more till we achieve. So that is what they are saying. So their perseverance is an interesting thing. Their perseverance is an interesting thing. So, and one mechanism they have adopted is also interesting. So it's not that the same person, except maybe some kind of leaders and such people, many are taking turns, right? They are going home and coming back. So one member maybe staying back here, one member going back to family. So those kinds of circular kind of methods, right? Back and forth kind of a thing they have adopted, and that is helping them in some sense to address the family level issues, also go back and address, and then again immediately come back to be here. So that is one method as to how they have sustained, apart from the collectivity that I saw, right? Collectivity in various aspects, organizing longer or mobilizing funds, right? Funds to take care of all the expenses, right? So even at the family level or even collectively, so they are now using circulatory method like migrants, right? These are the second homes, so it's a kind of a migration between village and the agitation site. Yes, so that is an important issue as to how this kind of perseverance has been there. Otherwise, living in these tents and the places with very minimal kind of basic facilities, it's not that easy. Particularly for women, it is not that easy. Initially, they told me they were having difficulty, and subsequently, some of the NGOs came forward and also created some minimum facilities like toilets and mini hospitals and such things were also created, and that has eased the situation, right? And slogans, all kinds of slogans are there, of course. Like of course, including political slogans like "We are farmers, we are not terrorists," because media was branding them as terrorists. So therefore, they had to take a counter narration, counter arguments, right? Using even social media to counter this kind of false propaganda and allegations that are going on. So what I saw on the site, they are hardcore typical farmers. They are not someone who has come there with any any instrument or any weapon or any such thing. Just simple, right? Farmers, right? As we see in villages, right? Maybe in Punjab, Haryana. So those kinds of farmers leading simple life and then peacefully, right? Going through this and agitating, right? So of course, other issues are there. There are people who have joined and supporting, etc. But at the site, particularly in these camps, big camps, they're all hardcore farmers. They're not any other kind of a people. That also has to be taken note of. Yeah, so therefore their slogans are also important, and then there variety of slogans and diagrams. Even the one that they have created showing the nexus between government and the corporate and media. So variety of such posters are there. Even posters of leaders, right? Past leaders like right? right, Bhagat Singh and various other people who have fought in the past. So they are all using such symbols. And there are many deaths that have happened, right? Of course, they are in their own way honoring them, considering them as martyrs. And in fact, the tent where I lived also, there was a death, and yeah, so they are in their own way, in some sense, right? Because it is it's highly sentimental and emotional issue. They have to address this in the midst of this agitation, right? People are dying, so therefore they are also using several strategies, right? Several strategies. Yeah, yes, of course, their main focus is on making government repeal these laws, right? Of course, they are saying this is a constitutional agitation, and we want the government to take back this agitation, right? So yeah, so the hospitals also can be seen, right? And even other kinds of needs are being met. Library, some kind of press, local press. They are circulating local news and all. People are creating variety of news based on what is happening on a daily basis. So very interesting things, and even that itself is worth studying. Those who are possibly look at collective actions and the kind of management and organizations that is on display is worth studying by people interested understanding those kinds of collective actions. Right, friends. Yeah. So now let me issue of sharing my thoughts on these bills and the agitation. Of course, farmers' movements are not new. As I said, that even because as a student, I had also participated. But historically, farmers' movements have been there, right? And they have taken different forms. Their goals also have been different. Of course, many of our farmers agitations which took place during British period, colonial period, right? So there was a spurt of farmers movements during the colonial period, and it was against the suppression and various other exploitative policies of the colonial rulers. Then post-independence also we have had farmers movements, and those also have assumed various kinds of forms and various goals, right? Again, at least typical farmers unions, farmers agitations have demanded a variety of support system, restoring subsidies, prices, giving concessional loans, etc. But there have also been radical agitations demanding tenancy rights, ownership, etc. Right. So these are all immediately after the independence. But then subsequently also, right, farmers agitations have taken place after 1980s, right? After 1980s, right, which are all called as new farmers movements. So they were all again sort of demanding state that it addresses their needs, because state was wanting farmers to contribute towards food production and food security. And farmers therefore have to invest a lot, right? So therefore they and their agriculture in that sense was becoming unviable, and they wanted state to support, right, continued support. So those new movements which have started since 1980s have been one of demanding state intervention to provide various support and subsidies to make their farming viable, right? And that also has led to variety of policies. Of course, then subsequently there was some kind of a impasse in the farmers' movement, because they themselves have undergone certain changes, because any movement goes through certain kind of changes, right? So they subsided. Then now again we see, but there were other kinds of social movements which took place, particularly since the launch of the economic reforms since 1990s, right? Environmental movement, right, and variety of other kinds of movement, including, of course, the movement against corruption, etc. Right, now again we are seeing new rounds of farmers agitation in new forms also, right? New forms with newer kinds of demand, right? New kinds of demand, right? Yeah. So therefore we need to take note of course, this changing sort of changing forms and the changing demands of the farmers agitation. So that is one way of looking at is the historical trajectory of farmers movement, and then look at the present farmers movement in that historical trajectory. But that would, of course, require some more time before this agitation gets over, and then we can make a final assessment, right? But as of now, we need to look at as to why farmers are agitating, why it has come up suddenly, and it has, of course, it's also fairly big, and also historically, it's one of the longest movements. The way it has been sustained, as I said, that for more than 60 days in Delhi itself, but much before that also in other parts, Punjab and other parts, right? There are also movements in other parts of the country which are also going on, though people are not giving attention. So therefore, it is not Delhi-centric, though media and other attention have all, because Delhi has come under some kind of a seize or attack. So there is a lot of attention also from the government side. So other dimensions of this, other places where farmers are agitating, like for example in Maharashtra, farmers walked for maybe 150 or 180 kilometers. There were no tractors, etc., just carrying their baggages on the head, etc. So nobody is taking note of such movements. They are only saying that maybe only tractor farmers are participating like that. But so there is a widespread support, and a variety of movements are also going on in support of these farmers' agitations in the country. Yeah, so therefore my interest is to understand therefore the larger issues confronting the agriculture, and it's linked to this farmers' agitation. Right. So as I said that I have not done any research. I have just for the sake of this seminar and also my some literature, though of course rural transformation issues including agriculture are an issue of my interest, which I keep tracking, on which also right now I'm also conducting a study. Right. So here therefore based on some desk research, I will try to locate this current farmers movement as to why possibly it has happened, and what was the compulsion for government to come up with this, what was the compulsion for government to come up with this kind of a law, and the way it has responded, right? Yeah, so therefore there are various actors, right? First, farmers are there, state is there, and also the corporate houses also have come in a big way. And farmers are attacking the corporate houses, right? They are saying that there is a nexus between corporate houses, government, and even the media, to maybe discredit them and also change the narration, etc. So therefore, understanding this kind of conflict requires a broader view. So in my view, as a social scientist, I think that a kind of a political economy perspective would be more important. What are the interests of different groups, and how possibly those interests are at conflict with each other, and how possibly some balance can be attained for the betterment of all and for addressing larger goals. So that is the perspective that I am taking in this presentation. Right, of course, I subsequently want to carry this forward in terms of a study whenever that becomes possible. Right, what are the farmers' demand? Right, of course, we are all now familiar with what are the farmers' demand. Right, the first is, yeah, they're saying they repeal these three laws, right? Popularly called as APMC Act, Contract Farming Act, and also Essential Commodity Act, right? EC Act. And they're also demanding make minimum support price, MSP, legal. Though nothing is there in these bills as such with regard to MSP, but they have brought up MSP as a major item, right? And linking it to these bills also, that I shall later on explain. And there is also another kind of a bill, electricity bill, which is there as part of the reforms agenda. They are demanding withdraw that electricity bill because that will affect farmers' subsidies for electricity, possibly, because the government wants to bring in direct benefit transfer. Like we have LPG for electricity, also they want to introduce direct benefit transfer, but they think that that will affect them. So they are demanding withdrawal of electricity bill. And the issue of stubble burning in Punjab and Haryana, which is a major, again, an environmental issue. So farmers are again feeling the pinch because governments are taking penal action. Supreme Court also has come in the way. So as a result, they are raising issue over the stubble burning also, because Haryana, Punjab recently have been penalizing farmers for stubble burning. But farmers say that we have certain constraints. Right, it's not that easy. So therefore, even scientists are working as to how possibly it could be addressed. Yeah, so there are also a larger kind of opposition. So at least 6 state governments say that we are not going to implement. They have passed a resolution against these bills, including 1 or 2 states against the electricity bill, right? And yeah, so therefore, so there was this response of the farmers and also the state governments, right? It is what has led to this sudden kind of an agitation, right? This is what has triggered this. This is what has triggered and what is going on daily at the core. There are several things going on, but at the core is these demands and agitation to assert for these demands, right? Yeah, so of course, though these laws are the triggers, but we must understand, as I said, that underlying reasons, right? Underlying reasons, particularly when they are saying that we don't want these bills, right? Government says that no, we have passed this after considerable debate and discussion. But farmers apparently think that they are convinced that no, these bills will be harmful, suicidal. The slogan says these farm bills will be suicidal. Please, yeah, yes, someone, right? Right. And of course, Supreme Court also has intervened and it has put some kind of a temporary suspension, it said, on the operationalization of the bills. And they've appointed an expert committee, and then they will pass a judgment based on proper hearing and also based on the expert committee's report. Of course, farmers have also opposed this expert committee. People in the committee, they are in some way favoring these bills, so therefore they may give a biased report, and they don't want to therefore interact with them. And the chairman of the committee also, who is a farmers leader, he resigned, saying that no, I will not be able to act in a neutral manner, so giving certain such reasons, so he has resigned. Incidentally, so while MSP has become an issue, government says we can't make MSP law, etc. So only 2 years back, the CACP, the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices, right, which is the government body which determines the cost of agricultural production, based on which MSP is announced, including other factors. It had said in its report of 2018, said that we need a legislation right to sell at MSP. This is what the CACP has said. Supporting also government intervention for MSP. It says that MSP should become a kind of a right. So they should have a right to sell at MSP, not possibly not below, right? That is what it is, right? So they should get at least the MSP, because there are arguments that even MSP is underestimation. The way it is calculated, various methods are there. So even then it is an underestimation. So CACP says that at least farmers should get MSP as a right. This is the stand of the CACP, the government body. The government is not ready to fully take this argument and then declare it as a legal right. They say it cannot be done as a legal right, though they may do it as a policy. It is there as a policy, right? So these are the farmers' demand, right? And and the rationale of the government for these acts, of course, the EC Act is basically, it says that EC, Essential Commodity Act, is a highly restrictive. It controls the foodstuff market in the country, supply, production, distribution. So it is archaic. So therefore, we are dismantling EC. So they literally have dismantled EC, saying that this will bring investment, this will create a competitive market environment. And one word used in that law is a statement by the government is that it will help overcome fears of the investors. Investors have fears. So therefore, this dismantling of EC Act will overcome the fears of the investors. Then, of course, the APMC Act, of course, there is a long name. I'm just APMC Act, basically to give freedom of choice to the farmers. So again, therefore, give scope for all traders and other people, right, who want to deal with agricultural products, right, to intervene outside the APMCs, anywhere, starting from farm gate to setting up an IT-based platform. You are free, so you will be like, you don't need a license like the APMC dealer license. So this will be given separately. Anyone can start with a PAN card. Anyone can start trading of agricultural commodities with a PAN card, right? So you can do trading at the farm gate prices, in the rural areas, in the APMC, in your own market, nationally, internationally, interstate, intrastate, anywhere, in any farm, you can do it, because EC Act also has been relaxed. And now this new act, therefore, creates a parallel structure in addition to the APMCs. Therefore, they can look beyond, go beyond APMC. So that is the APMC Act. So farmers are again worried about that. And then the third is this Contract Farming Act. So though Model Contract Farming Act was there, and some of the states also had amended contract for their APMC Act to introduce contract farming. At least 21 states had amended their APMC and Act, right? So here there is a national law for contract farming. Model law was there in 2003 and also in 2017. Now for the first time, government at the national level has introduced a contract farming law, giving a national framework and creating enabling conditions for farmers and the agribusiness firms, processors, wholesalers, and several other people, exporters, retailers, everyone to come together, sign a treatment, run contract for production, for inputs, for supply, for processing, for whatever operations that will add value, that will lead to investment, that will add value to the chain. So that, and then the farmers therefore will be able to get remunerative prices, right? So, and it has several enabling conditions, including saying that there need not be any civil courts here. They have suggested alternative reconciliation mechanisms, dispute resolution mechanism, because contract farmings in the past have led to various kinds of arguments and disputes between farmers and the sponsors. So therefore it was not thriving. So they think that now creating this alternative legal framework, right, alternative dispute resolution mechanism, will possibly incentivize the investors to come forward and without any kind of hesitancy and fear take advantage of it, right? So therefore these are the three basic laws, and these are the rationales as enunciated in the bill itself by the government. So therefore it's basically government. So therefore what are the underpinnings? Why government is trying to do these things? So that is where we need to look at some of the underlying aspects, right? Basically, government wants to push the reforms agenda. So that is very clear, right? Some people are saying that this is the 1991 moment of agriculture, because though we started our reforms in 1991 onwards, but agriculture somehow has lagged behind, right? Largely because agriculture comes also in the state domain, state governments play a major role in agriculture, and government has been suggesting them to reform, but somehow governments have been slow or reluctant or varied in their reforms initiation with regard to agriculture. So central government is to think that we are not going, we're not doing enough to agricultural reforms. It is stuck, there is an impasse, etc. So there's a lot of frustration in central investors, especially the outside investors also. So therefore, government also passed a model act in 2017, again for same APMC and other aspects, right? And suggested state governments to adopt, right? Those several state governments by that time itself had adopted part of the features, etc. But still the center was not satisfied. So therefore, this COVID crisis came as a blessing in disguise. So with the COVID crisis, even in the middle of lockdown, government started major reforms. So in all areas, including in agriculture, because government thought that this is the right time, so it can introduce these bills quickly, right? They started with ordinance and then subsequently introduced the bills. So because everyone are worried about COVID and lockdown, etc. So that itself is a major issue. So it can therefore easily introduce these kinds of laws without much fuss, right? Because this is a sensitive issue, right? Agriculture is a sensitive issue. It's not that easy. So, and since the government also is politically and ideologically committed to reforms of the neoliberal kind, it was finding it difficult to push. In the first term of the NDA regime, present NDA regime, they largely adopted welfareist approach. There were less of reforms. So there was a pressure on this government because when it came in 2014, everyone expected that they will push reforms in a big way, just as they had done in Gujarat earlier. So, but that was not happening. So there was pressure that was getting built on the because government was also trying to invite FDIs, FIIs in various ways. So, and therefore they were not happy with our laws, particularly in the agricultural sector. Agriculture, it's a big sector. We have a big problem. So they wanted, therefore, global as well as local corporate houses to invest considerably in the agricultural sector, right? So, but they were pressurizing that laws are not proper or a lot of difficulties. So they were not happy. So they were not also happy with what happened with earlier contract farming. There were many kind of issues that had cropped up. So the contract farming did not thrive in the big way as it was expected. Though it came up in several places, including Punjab and several states, but it did not thrive. So therefore, there was pressure from therefore the capital, domestic and global. This is another thing. Government, of course, is committed to reforms. It has this agenda. It has declared itself in all its manifestos, but was unable to do it in the first term. So second term, this COVID came as a blessing in disguise, and simultaneously pressure was building up. And also in the coming days, though currently WTO also has reached an impasse, some relaxation has been given for our market access domestic support like PDS, MSP, FCI. But soon the WTO issues also will catch up. Western countries, right, America, UA, they all want India to relax its markets, especially agricultural markets. So those pressures were already there. So those momentarily there is an impasse, but soon once that period will be over, that 10-year period that was given, once that will be over, there will be a lot of pressure from them. So the government therefore thought that this is the right time to go ahead with this kind of a more radical reforms and national level reforms, which was earlier not possible, which was possibly going on very incrementally at the state level. Yeah, so that is the sort of the political and ideological underpinnings as to why government pushed for these reforms, right? So at the right, of course, now in what context this has happened? Why farmers are also agitating? So there is this underlying or brewing agrarian crisis. Everyone admits. Government also admits. Agrarian crisis has come out, manifested itself in various ways. Low agricultural growth, continued dependence of large section of rural population, then division and subdivision of land holdings, leading to creation of small farms, right, unviable farms, etc., and then growing unemployment and surplus labor, right? So these are all some of the very common features of our agricultural and rural sector. And of course, a major symptom of this is farmer suicides, which are happening all over the country because of this underlying agrarian crisis. So this underlying agrarian crisis, as I understand, is part of the basic unresolved agrarian question, right? Every country has tried to address this agrarian question in some way or the other. What is this agrarian question? Of course, agrarian question comes up in the Marxian literature also and in the neoclassical literature also. So one way of addressing agrarian question is transforming the agricultural sector into a modern, with bulk of rural population being shifted to non-farm sector and urban areas, shifted even forcibly. Forcibly, because sometimes they will not move or it is not easy to. So either forcibly or through reforms or in any way you can enable the corporate houses to subsume agriculture in their operations. So make this rural become agriculture become more of industrial. So that is not happening easily in countries like India. Therefore, the agrarian question, though people say globally has got resolved in many countries, but in developing countries it has not got resolved. China has attempted to an extent, but still agrarian question still needs to be resolved even in China, which shifted a huge number of people from rural to urban areas. Yeah, of course, government is aware of it. Government, every document says that we need to shift our people from rural to urban, right? But it is not that easy. So what are the ways government is thinking? Government thinks that, of course, if we can bring in investment, and if there is a lot of investment, that possibly will help, right? Absorb the labor, and also non-farm sector can grow, and a lot of this labor can be shifted in urban and other areas, right? So, but investment is not that easy, right? Global or local investment in the expected way, it is not happening. So added to that, though we have liberalized the industrial sector, but industrial sector is characterized by largely by jobless growth. Though they are absorbing some labor, but largely on a casual and informal basis, largely. Regular employment is not happening. So therefore, trickle down in terms of employment is not happening in a significant way in rural areas. There is negative growth of formal jobs. That is what has happened. So therefore, government wants to address this agrarian question, but does not know. It only thinks that only investment can create this kind of jobs and shifting. But even this investment of the neoliberal kind is one of jobless thing. So it will not still absorb. Investment may come, it will not still absorb. So therefore, it still remains. So, but the government therefore thought that, okay, let us take a risk. Let us, this COVID has given us an opportunity. Let us go whole hog and bring in this which were getting stuck, right? Some of the people who are also there in some of the policy making bodies also from long, have been supporting these kinds of reforms. So therefore, they used to also advocate that no, government must push agrarian reforms. That is the way forward for agrarian, resolving the agrarian question, right? So therefore, this government ideologically very much inclined to such kind of reforms and neoliberalism. So therefore, at least in its second term, did not have any hesitancy using this kind of a crisis, pushed it, right? So this is how this has happened. So let me show some data to highlight this kind of a crisis issue, right? One, of course, is this declining farm size, right? So we can see the latest census also. Overall, 86% are small farmers. Average holding is less than 1 hectare, right? 86% are small and marginal farmers. This is as per the government data, right? And that is one of the major challenge, right? And then 50%, nearly 50% are dependent on agriculture and allied for employment, right? 50%. And the GDP is less than 15% in agriculture right now, less than 15%. So therefore, there is a squeeze. There's a kind of a contradiction and distortion. More than 50% labor there, but less than 15% income, total income, right? So that is a major kind of a challenge. That is where the squeeze has happened. Income squeeze has happened, and that is why all kinds of socio-economic problems, poverty, inequality, and whatnot, low human development in rural areas, variety of things are because of this squeeze, and this is part of that crisis, right? Growth, agricultural growth, as I said that, yes, so though after reforms it was thought that it would go up, the government has been aiming, even 12th plan aimed at least 4% growth we should have, 4% growth in agriculture, but that has also not been possible, right? Of course, though in COVID times, agriculture has grown positively at long-term growth rate of 4% that was visualized has not happened even after reforms. So government want that at least 4% growth must happen. Though non-farm has grown, though there are also fluctuations, but it has grown particularly reforms in the 1990s, but there is a gap between therefore agricultural growth and the non-agricultural growth, industry and manufacturing and service sector, and that is leading to disparities in income. The squeeze, I said, is leading to a lot of disparities. Whatever data that is available, right? If you look at the income of the agricultural labor, farmer, and the urban worker, right? This is of course almost 8-9 years back, right? Currently, of course, I could not get, but whatever I am mustered, it shows a huge disparity between the labor, farmer, and the urban worker, right? So therefore, the rural-urban disparity and the farmer's income, right? So are much lower, right? So and that is the reason. So therefore, the theories, right? Even the Lewis, etc. Yeah, we should convert all these agricultural labor, farm laborers into urban workers, because they automatically their productivity will increase and the incomes will increase, wages will increase, and that is the way forward to resolve, right? So, but how do we do that? That is an issue. So therefore, the squeeze is leading to rural-urban gaps in all parameters of development, right? And these are quantitative, but qualitatively they are much more acute, right? Like literacy, though there is a significant improvement in literacy, but rural education quality, we all know of what kind. Same with health, etc., right? So therefore, government say is trying various kinds of programs, right, in its own way. A reformist program, it says that we will double farmers' income because there is underlying crisis, suicides, and there are also vote banks. So therefore, government says that we will double farmers' income, right? So they made studies, there were reports. They said that yeah, we will double it from 96,000 to 172,000, right? In 2022-23, right? So nearly 8.6% growth rate, right? When agriculture is not able to grow at 4%, they say that it will double, which will require 8.6% growth. So, and that would require what? And that would require an annual investment of 12.5% by private sector and 16.8% by public sector, both of which are not coming forth. Government says it will double and it knows how much investment is required. So, but will this come? So where will this investment come? Government investment also is getting squeezed, right? And of course, with COVID also that has suffered, we have suffered. So we don't know from where will this come. So leave aside addressing or solving the agrarian question, basic agrarian question, whether this even doubling of income will happen. We don't know. Now with the decline in the GDP, etc., the next 2-3 years, so there will be possibly even negative trend also in many areas. So that will add to the already existing crisis, right? So Niti Aayog, of course, the 3-year plan, of course they have dismantled planning. We don't have planning. So Niti Aayog has come up with a 3-year action agenda, right, for the country, 2017 to 20. In the agriculture, it says what is the way forward for agriculture? It is reforms. That is what it says on the same lines, right? Reform MSP, reform agricultural produce, reform the tenancy land, try and increase productivity by bringing in investment. It has been building up, even Niti Aayog has been building up policy rationale for these kinds of reforms, right? So therefore, whether it is doubling of the income or even to resolve the agrarian crisis, so more of investment, more of reforms, right? So how they will come, of course, that is nobody is not sure. Nobody is sure. Though government think that reforms will bring laws, will bring investment, right? Of course, under planning, government was committed to invest by various ways. Now there is no planning. There is no onus on government. Even if government has to invest for doubling farmers' income, 16.8% growth year from the public sector side. Will the governments invest? Will they mobilize? No, it will be there in the report. So investment probably will come from elsewhere or out of blue. No idea. Right. So that is what is the reformist agenda rather than a planned or a more radical kind of an approach. That is how I see it. Right. So therefore, how do we assess this government approach? Right. So one is, of course, laws, introducing these laws. And second, of course, is the grounds on which, whether this can be justified, whether what government expects from these laws will they happen, right? So my take, of course, as I said, that this is a market-based reforms, following capitalist approach, using neoliberal reforms, given the ideology, right? It's one of aiding capitalist accumulation. Of course, that is how the Western countries resolve their agrarian crisis, right? The government and state supported the capitalist sector to, right, in some way, right, absorb the agricultural sector, subsume the agricultural sector in terms of land, labor, commodity, markets, etc., through its various kinds of operations, right? So therefore, government is aiming for that. Second, government thinks that these 3 laws particularly, so will possibly lead for more investment, and it will automatically lead to weakening of APMC, MSP, and procurement, etc., right? Which are supposed to happen logically when WTO takes its logical long-term goal, right? Governments have to dismantle, right? To start with, that was the major argument. Dismantle your PDS, dismantle your food stock, etc. Those were the initial arguments. Lot of opposition to WTO. Then they were all given concessions. So these concessions are running for certain years. But once they are over, there will be a push. So therefore, government thinks that by enacting these laws, we don't have to on our own dismantle. They will naturally get dismantled, right? the agricultural reforms because it is a sensitive issue. So they say that no, we have not done it. It has automatically happened. Farmers themselves have opted for it. So that kind of a logic, because it is sensitive. So therefore, this is a kind of a no two-edged kind of a sword or a approach that the government has used, short-term and long-term kind of reforms, right? Unlike the incremental steps various state governments are taking, right? The government itself says 21 states have amended their APMC acts in the past, right? They have amended, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I'll come back to these questions. I'm seeing these questions. That is interesting. I will soon complete, and then I'll because we should debate, right? Yeah, so therefore, on two grounds, I will fault the approach of the government. One, or I will criticize the approach of the government. One, yeah, we are a parliamentary democracy, so therefore, bulldozing laws through parliament without giving parliament adequate role to debate, and also even bypassing the states, those states were implementing their own laws, right, in many ways. So therefore, in some sense, it has short-circuited the state parliament and the state governments, right, which is not good for parliamentary democracy and also our federal system, right, the cooperative federalism, etc. This government talks of, all of them have been given a short circuit. So first aspect of it. Now government thinks that through this laws, it will possibly resolve this agrarian crisis and agrarian question, double farmers' income, shift farmers to non-farm sector. So can law per se help? Law per se help? If law per se were to help, Bihar agriculture should have got resolved. All the return migration that happened to Bihar after COVID, all the employment issue that came up during recent elections should not have happened because Bihar has already dismantled its APMC system. So why law in Bihar did not help? So therefore, it is not a straightforward question that just law will resolve this, right? Laws, yes, definitely, laws will definitely help. Laws will definitely help. But when the crisis is of a much more structural and fundamental nature, can mere law enable this, right? Yeah, so that is one ground I object. Second, of course, is that so it will bring in, of course, more of markets. As I said, that food stuff is relaxed, APMCs are relaxed, the regulations are relaxed. Contract farming has more enabling provisions, including no intervention of the civil courts, etc. So therefore, it will bring in more of markets and market players into this thing. So agriculture, in our agriculture, is already subject to several vagaries, climate vagaries, disasters, and whatnot. Right now, we will add further compound this with various kinds of vagaries. Right. So therefore, there will be increased uncertainties, increased shocks, maybe increased such symptoms like suicides. So, and some of our achievements that we have already are having, right, at least some decent stock in the godown, etc. All these things possibly might get reversed, and therefore our unaddressed challenges of poverty, food security, etc. will get a big hit. On global hunger index, India still is still very, very low. I think 102 out of 107 countries or so reporting, right? So it's not a very commendable achievement. So we still have long gaps in food security area. So those kinds of things might get reversed, and the results would be possibly even negative, right? Yeah. So therefore, we need to, of course, reforms could be needed. Therefore, we debate and try and arrive at how possibly for balancing all these goals, balancing the needs of investment, agricultural crisis, farmers' need, food security, all of them, how possibly we do it. We simply think that by bulldozing laws we can possibly, resolve the crisis and address all these issues. Maybe in a democratic country, possibly it's not the right thing. That's my take, right? Okay, APMC Act. Yeah, in a way, even APMC Act also, right, creates a parallel system to APMCs. Government says APMCs will not be dismantled, but the kind of freedom, the kind of conditions that have been put forth for private traders, private interventions, investment, etc. So that will slowly that will slowly weaken APMCs, right? Of course, APMCs are not present everywhere. There, it is not uniform. That much issue is also there. But now with the parallel competitive system coming in, which is much more flexible, which has a much more clear enabling conditions, right? So APMCs will feel the pinch unless APMCs get strengthened. Government says that they will be there, they should be there, right? But unless government also empowers them, strengthens them, right? So APMCs, in my view, will almost meet the fate of BSNL. BSNL, we know what has happened. Being a state-run public sector, one of the longest firm, not able to even adopt 4G. 4G, all companies are talking in terms of 5G because government deliberately is possibly trying to suppress BSNL and wants to kill it. So same thing will happen to APMCs, right? So APMCs, they possibly will win away, like what has happened in Bihar. And we also know, therefore, many of the price that is realized in Bihar is much lower, right? And even from Bihar, people even take food to Punjab and Haryana and other places to sell, because there they get better MSP than in Bihar. All those things have happened, including that not much of investment has flown in Bihar in the agricultural sector. So therefore, APMCs are at a threat. Yeah. So therefore, and they are in MSP operations, right? Of course, farmers are demanding that MSPs have to be. Farmers are demanding that MSP has to be ensured, because farmers think that automatically, with the weakening of the APMC, right, increase in the private market, so naturally even MSP will get weakened. Infrastructure will get possibly weakened, right? And the market operations also in such a way will possibly suppress APMCs, right? And government therefore will go by market, because it has now enabled investment, and it cannot therefore it says that to overcome the fear of the investors, that is one of the objectives. So therefore it will not so easily reverse, or it may even curtail slowly it may curtail the MSP and support for food procurement, etc. So that is the fear of the farmers, and particularly from Punjab, because MSP has played a major role in states like Punjab, right? Punjab, Haryana. But now, of course, MSP is spreading in other states also. Earlier, it was almost monopoly of only 1 or 2 states, but now it has become a much broad-based kind of an intervention. So therefore, farmers elsewhere also demanding MSP. Right, like as I said, even CACP has demanded that the MSP should be made a kind of a right-based kind of a legislation for the farmers. Yeah, so therefore we need to, even if we are pushing with this, we have to ensure that APMC remains as a balancing kind of a thing. And APMC role not only is direct but also indirect, because even people used to look for APMC for price signals elsewhere. So that role APMCs should continue to play. Contract farming, of course, it had a muted response. This law thinks that it will now give boost to contract farming, and will bring in significant investment in supply chain, cold storage, and then variety of ways, right? That is the thing. But my assessment is that it's not that easy. Agriculture is so diverse. Private market will not invest uniformly. In agriculture, we need intervention in all districts, all sectors. Because everywhere farmers are there, we need to look after their welfare, food security, employment, etc. We cannot say that only in some sector investment has gone and they will, of course that will help those farmers, but definitely not everywhere. So inequalities are bound to happen. Investments will not happen uniformly. And the dispute resolution mechanism here, even though some of the state governments have adopted contract farming and they have even gone for tribunal and such system, but this law is dismantling even that. It is bringing in bureaucracy. It's taking the dispute resolution mechanism outside the civil court system, civil courts, right, and bringing in bureaucracy. So once you bring in bureaucracy, it means automatically government will play a role, and the bureaucracy, who will possibly can influence the corporates, possibly will have access to government and bureaucracy, and bureaucracy in general will not side the farmers possibly. They will side the industrialists and the corporates if there are any disputes. That is bound to happen. That is why government has therefore taken it out of the civil courts, about which the investors and corporates are wary of. Going to courts is a headache for them. Now a DM or a subdivisional officer or an agricultural marketing officer and such people will now determine the outcome of the any disputes and take care of the enforcement. Yeah, that is the positive strength for them. But whether this will also, as I said, that will lead to widespread investment all across the country is still a question. We know what has happened to agricultural insurance. Government has brought in agricultural insurance companies, but government is subsidizing now the agricultural companies. Right? So the government thought that bringing in agricultural insurance companies, private insurance companies, will lead to widespread increase in agricultural insurance. But now what we are seeing in the last 2 years is a reversal of it. The profits are being made by few agricultural insurance companies, and some of the state governments have dismantled the agricultural insurance because they think that we are subsidizing the private investors and the companies and not the farmers. So those kinds of reversal might happen. Those kinds of reversal might happen here also. Of course, FPOs are to be pushed. Of course, collectives are important, but under the current kind of a system, FPOs will be mere agents. They will be mere agents unless they are empowered kind of institutions like AMUL having control over the food chains. They will be just part of the put out system, right? And they will play as agents. And they will definitely not empower farmers fully, right? It has to be a much more empowered structure of the AMUL kind, right? Are not mere just links somewhere as agents. That's how I see them. Yeah. So therefore, farmers are asking the maximalist thing, right? Of course, agricultural crisis is there everywhere, and more so even in Punjab and Haryana, where costs are very high, though incomes are also high, but their costs are also a high. Burden of debt is very high. Therefore, there also we are seeing suicide. So therefore, farmers feel that MSP will wither away with these reforms. Logically, because of the reforms, it will wither away. The government is saying that APMCs will remain, MSP will remain. Farmers have understood, but this will not happen. They are fearing, right? So that is a valid ground for them to suspect, and valid ground for them to demand MSP, because even MSP is not covering fully their costs. Yeah. So and also people are saying that these are all bigger and richer farmers. That is not the case in India. 86%. Though Punjab has a slightly different thing, but there also fragmentation is happening. Proletarianization is happening. Death of farmers is also happening in Punjab and Haryana. So farmers as a whole are getting reduced to marginal class as a whole in general, except small segment at the thing. So therefore, this is a much wider kind of a farmers agitation involving even small and marginal farmers, who are of course in greater number, who needs to be definitely collectivized. So government cannot give up MSP. It has to widen, even if it is not going to make it a law. We therefore need to debate all these things and appropriately arrive at a consensus and agreeable kind of a mechanism, right? Rather than bulldozing them. We need more of public investment, even for doubling income, 16% annually. That is not happening, right? That is not happening, right? So employment will come only through such kind of investment, not by mere laws, not even by simple skill training programs, variety of skill training program. They also will not generate employment. Yeah, so that is how we see this. So therefore I conclude here. Sorry friends, I took more time. It was it's a little packed. There were so many issues I couldn't control, and then I therefore yeah, it took time. Yeah, very sorry, but I thank all of you for your presentation, right? Yes, there are several kinds of comments that have there come in. Yeah, maybe I will quickly go one by one. Kaushik is saying that if these bills go through, will the government face similar issue like 207, the procurement of commodities for social welfare operations like PDS, right? Yeah, so if these bills go through, means Kaushik, I'm not able to, what was the crisis in 206?
Sir, 2006 and 2007, sir. Like the wheat price and other things they were forced to import from abroad, no? Like those crises. Like
Ha,
when
ha,
they were.
some certain years these fluctuations will be there. Yeah, of course, as I said that agriculture not only is diverse, agriculture is crisis ridden in the sense that there are frequent fluctuations, right? So some years, yes, we get bumper crops. Some years there will be scarcity, prices will shoot up, etc. All these things will be there. So therefore, some kind of a mediating role for these kinds of interventions are always there, and food definitely one must take care of. Food one must take care of. So therefore, these bills, if they relax and weaken these kinds of mechanisms, right? We are bound to face a crisis now and then, more frequently. Now also we face. Sometimes we see certain commodities prices go up, onion go up, the pulse goes up 200 rupees, 300 rupees. So that will increase. That kind of situation is likely to increase. So therefore, some balancing role till we say that we have totally resolved our food crisis, food security issue. So we need to be intervening. Even CSCP says public intervention by way of these kinds of mechanisms are needed. Right? It is saying that we need MSP as a right. Even CSCP government body which fixes the price is saying. Right, Anand? Yeah. So insightful, Sam. My question is: for farmers in general, in media, in popular option, are projected as costless entities, cost powers, tied land in India. In a theological standpoint, given these three farm laws get implemented, what do you think will be the impact on the agrarian sociology? Yeah, so Ananda is asking, of course, I'm not a sociologist, but whatever understanding I have got, right? As I said that in general, there is farmers are getting reduced to marginal class in general. Of course, there are also some richer segments, but at a larger level, they are getting reduced to marginal, and many are also getting proletarianized. That is one economically class. There is also feminization of agriculture that has happened, right? Particularly in terms of agricultural operations, right? Agricultural operations, right? Yeah, so therefore there is some kind of a government wants to bring in tenancy also. So there will be possibly some kind, they bring in tenancy reforms all over also. Along with this thing, there could be reversal of tenancy, reverse tenancy will happen. So there will be reverse transfer of land from all these small and marginal farmers to better off farmers. So who naturally in all these states, who are all upper caste farmers, upper caste and other backward OBC farmers who are better off. So they will get consolidated, right? They will be able to consolidate. They did benefit. These upper caste farmers or richer farmers did benefit by various policies of the government as compared to small and marginal farmers. So now, because of these laws and also because of the continued crisis, so that process will get more acute, and the better off farmers by caste, by gender, by that means male, and by land class, there will be more consolidation of them, and small and marginal farmers will give up agriculture, will give up land, and that is happening. That is my take, if not as a sociologist, but as an economist, right? Right. Yeah. So then, of course, Avadut is asking, sir, do you think the marginal and small holding farmers have voice in the protest, as most of the leaders of farmers movement have large land holding? My understanding about farmers movement leaders in Punjab is limited. But in Maharashtra, large landholders are the leaders of the farmers movement and are largely upper caste. Yeah, that is my answer to same answer I have given Avadut to Anand. And your question is also of that nature. So I say that there could be reversal, there could be consolidation in favor of the better of farmers, possibly, right? That is my hypothesis, right? And at the same, it's both are important question, because we cannot ignore this class dimension, class and caste dimension in India. Caste is additional thing in India, and gender also has got added with feminization. It's a very complex thing, very complex and challenging thing. So therefore, when I say this collectivization of small and marginal farmers is to prevent such drastic proletarianization. which is going to happen in the coming years. So therefore, if we can collectivize them, make FPOs or collectives, cooperatives, etc., in an empowered way, to an extent they can survive. Otherwise, they will be forced to quit agriculture because it will not be that easy. It will not be that easy. Yeah, that is my take to Avadut. Yeah, Professor Shah is there. Thanks for the seminar. Yeah, sorry to log out. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks for participating, Professor Shah. Yes, yeah, these are the questions, and my response. Yeah, anyone has any other take, different take, please share. Don't hesitate. This is a debate. This is a seminar. We also, I mean, everyone would like to understand and understand the other dimension of it, right? Yeah, anyone has a different take? Anybody has a different take? Yeah, so there are a couple of more questions. Meanwhile, Jalaj is asking, one aspect that hasn't been particularly well recorded is the COVID situation at the protest. What were your observations? Yeah, as I had said in my email I had sent a week ago. So I was wearing my mask because I had gone from here, but there were no masks. Right? They have literally given up. They think that what is this mask when we are fighting this kind of? They say that we are ready to face the bullets. Those kinds of arguments were there. Some of the farmers says बुलेट्स खाने के लिए भी तैयार है. सो ये कोविड क्या है, कोविड कैसे आएगा? देखिए अभी 2 महीने से हम हैं, 2 months we are struggling here, no COVID has come, but farmers are dying because of other reasons, comorbid reasons. So we have to take care of those things. COVID is not a worry for us. That was observation, but we don't know what is the situation, whether there was some kind of a herd immunity or any such thing. As such, COVID in a major way had not affected. There are health centers who are also checking farmers daily for variety of conditions, etc. In a major way, it had not been observed. So why, I don't know, but at least apparently COVID was not a issue there. They were saying we can ignore COVID like that. That was their stand. Right, Shweta, yeah, thanks. My question is, do you think farmer producer companies are better alternatives to APMCs? There has been a lot of debate going on regarding this, right? Yeah, so no, FPOs, yeah, they collectivize farmers, but then ultimately they have to depend on market, right? Either for sourcing inputs or marketing their produce. So these FPOs ultimately have to play with the market, right? APMC or even Amul, they are larger systems. They have control, regulation over the market from end to end. They have control. FPOs, unless they grow, right? They will be very weak players. As I said, that they will become agents, right? They will become agents of some of the companies or business houses, and they will play only a marginal role. Right? So therefore, unless they become big, increase their stakes, increase their market share, etc., they will be weak players. And it will take a lot of time for FPOs to come up in a big way to become big players. So APMC till that time has to be the safeguard. APMC has been a safeguard between the farmers and the buyers. So APMC has to play, and if FPOs can come up and play an effective role, they can also be another safeguard, and that will be an empowerment for the farmers. That's my take. Nishat, as you said that you have attended the protest earlier, what difference did you notice in the government response then and now? Right. I know now in Karnataka, those days also the Karnataka Right Sangha agitations were very strong. And that time also initially they were telling we are not taking any political party support, we are neutral. Currently we are also seeing that, right? So we don't want to involve any political parties. We are for farmers' cause. When fighting for them, we will not allow. So those days also, yeah. So then governments also those days also responded with a lot of force. Then also, so in fact, one of the governments lost power in Karnataka because there was a firing on farmers' agitation. That became a major contentious issue in Karnataka. Government used force also. And then farmers also become very, very violent. They said that we will not allow any officers to come to villages. If any officer comes, we will boycott. It had become highly contentious, and government then also had taken some kind of a very, very antagonistic and a very a highly police-oriented kind of a stand that we see now, highly law enforcing kind of a role, right? Even brutal to some extent in some places. That was the case earlier. That is the case now also. The state has not changed. State has become more and more ruthless and less democratic, right? In India's democratic again index or score is also is less, right? So that is my take. So therefore, the same is the situation. And farmers also movements also, they were telling they are neutral. Then they also joined politics. They also supported many political parties, all mainstream parties, Congress, BJP, and various other parties also. They also did that, right? So that might happen also now. Also that might happen. It is already happening. Also we are seeing. So therefore things change, but things remain same. That is the take I would say. Yeah, Deepak, sir, I read one article that a country develops on ashes of farmers. Is it better truth or a Western stereotype, right? Sorry, Deepak, tell me again. Deepak?
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Sir, my question is that every country we say developed, it started with farming, then it shifted to industry and then to services. It is the, the most common mode of development of a country.
Yeah.
So, sir, I read an article which says that if a country develops if a country needs to develop, then it has to shift from agriculture to industry. Sir, is it a bitter truth or just a follow up of Western?
You mean farmers have been reduced to ashes? You are saying like that, right?
I mean to say that, sir, the industry develops on the
Yeah. Right. If I have understood that, yes, farmers will be subjected to ruthless, exploitation, force, violence, etc. If that is the take, right? Yeah, that has been the story of capitalist march over agriculture, right? How agrarian question has been resolved, right? For example, in the UK, to start with, enclosure movements. There were all enclosures. People were thrown out, and big farmers and industries enclosed all agricultural land. Anyone entering were almost killed or eliminated, etc. So violence also has taken place in many countries, right? So it has been violent, and also in many ways also physically they have struggled, right? They've struggled as peasants, as laborers, exploited, and variety of ways farmers have suffered all over, right? So that is the history, right? And that has happened, of course, in British period. It happened in India, right? Farmers suffered a lot. And therefore, there were a lot of agitations even during the colonial period in India, also elsewhere, also, right? Our independence movement also goes parallelly with the farmers' movement, because farmers have suffered, and that is there. That aspect is there. So therefore, it's not that easy being farmer, right? So though if you are a better off farmer, then fine, a rich farmer, but that's not that easy, right? Yeah, Ayush. Okay, Juhi. So farmers are of the view that if this movement dies, the country may not see another ever, seeing the situation of freedom of expression in the country with journalists being arrested. Would you say this is true? If it dies? No, movements anyway, they may die because of certain, they follow certain trajectories. They burn out is one aspect, or sometimes government tries to burn them, like ashes or whatever, tries to forcibly kill them. That has happened in the past. Government tries to break all movements, right? Even British did, divide and rule. Government presently also they try and do divide and rule. They suppress. They use all means. No governments, democratic government or a non-democratic, whatever dictator, no one likes the protests. No one likes the protests. And agricultural protests, protests of the farmers are more sentimental. They raise a lot of sentimental issues. So therefore, governments become very fussy. They respond with sometimes in a very like what we are seeing governments. So they are rattled by that, because they think that this will create a perception in minds of the people that we are not for farmers and we are making farmers suffer. So therefore, they respond in a wide variety of ways, using force and variety of things. So and they suppress also. They try various means, directly, indirectly, to suppress. But in democracy, of course, if you are a thriving democracy, so if there are challenges and problems, some or the other kinds of agitations would always come up. People thought that the black issue has always subsided in US. US resolved its black dilemma. No, it has not been resolved. it comes up again and again in USA, right? Even though that is supposed to be the longest democracy, one of the biggest democracies, have they resolved the block issue with all the economic development? No. So therefore, we have not been able to. They will come up, and governments will become, as I said, that will become more and more brute in the coming days. So that will be my take. That will be my take. Therefore, movements will not stop. Right. Sir, according to Shantakumar committee report, yeah, 6% of farmers actually succeed in selling their crops at MSO. Why are farmers so persistent for MSP? Is MSP actually helpful, right? Yes. Ayush, I will simply say like this. So how many of our students, student means, let us say higher education students, would be able to get access to institutions like JNU or IRMA or any such institutions, right, which are good, which are also reasonable, affordable, etc. Very few, right? So,
Yes, sir.
so we need, therefore, just because it is only small percentage of people getting good access to better higher education, affordable education, should other students not demand? Yeah, everyone has a right. So farmers are producing for themselves, for their livelihood, and also for the country, right? So they should, even the MSP is, as per the estimations, as per the assessments, is not meeting their needs, right? With the increased cost of cultivation, so it has become unviable. So they need support. So even whether legally or otherwise, it should be widened. That is my take. So that is my take, right? Yeah. So it's not a question that it is 6%. So therefore, why, right? So therefore, how many are getting higher education or even public access to health? So should we have a wider public health system or not? Just because only few, there are only few good hospitals like Delhi, AIIMS or such. So should we not have AIIMS like hospital all over the country? So it is something like that comparatively. Of course, though one is social, another is economic issue. So here variety of other considerations come up. Yeah, but since farmers have been exposed to market unlike earlier days, they are also facing, unlike in earlier days when they were subject to vagaries of market, traders and banias, now markets, proper markets are also affecting them. So they need some safeguard. MSP, if of course it is not possible, like PDS. Have we extended PDS to all? No, though there is a demand that PDS should become universal. Currently, our PDS is supposed to cover 66%, right? Government is giving PDS every month, right? 35 kilos or whatever, right? Recently, it gave free during COVID time, right? To more than 66%. So it is something like that. That is how I see it. So widening it also would be helpful. That is why their demand. Right, Mukul sir, do you think that this protest is running into a larger public movement against the constructing civil liberties and farm laws have taken backseat, and it is now a standoff with the government with global eyes turning towards it? Because high point of protest was when government agreed to hold back laws for 1.5 years. Yeah, that happens, Mukul, because any movement of this kind brings in other attention, right? Even here, when Narmada agitation was going on, there was a World Bank intervention. World Bank stopped the loan, and Gujarat government said that we don't want your loan. We will finance our own loan. We don't want anybody to dictate. We want Narmada Dam. So any agitation, any social agitation. So there are these kinds of in a globalized world now, especially, there will be intervention. Some are genuine intervention. Some may be vested interest. Both may happen. Both take advantage. Social media, farmers were telling that if social media would not have been there, our interest would have been suffered, our viewpoints would not have reached, they are saying. But sometimes social media also plays the other role. The common media now, the general media is playing against the farmers. Farmers are now using social media, right? So therefore there will be both ways, right? And this is bound to happen in a big movement. And ultimately, therefore, it is for both the parties to remain focused on what are their issues rather than get distracted. They should remain focused on these issues rather than getting distracted. And if their issues are genuine, which I think is genuine given the issues that I raised, So therefore, both it is in the interest of the government and it is in the interest of the farmers to resolve those issues rather than get distracted, right? That is the take Mukul, right? Yeah. So do you think BJP hope to also gain some kind of political capital with these reforms? Yeah, of course. It is their political ideology, right? For whatever reason, right? So they think that parallelly they can, of course, BJP at least goes by two ideology. It also has a religious ideology and cultural ideology. It also has economic ideology. So why it follows those ideologies? Because it thinks that on that basis it will build its constituency and mobilize its vote banks, right? So therefore they will try and play out as to how that will benefit them, right? According to the situation locally, because in different states there are different kinds of responses. So accordingly they will play out, and their political parties in parliamentary democracy, they will take advantage, right? Of course, the black movement in US, there was agitation, right? So was a Democratic Party or no other parties not taking advantage of the black movement, right? So all political parties, they are there for power. They are there for power. Whatever would help them accordingly, they will also resort to, all political parties will resort to divide and rule and whatever, right? So sometimes even taking contradictory stand, hypocritic stand, etc. So that is why when I say that we must have objective and dispassionate debate, when I'm saying today, therefore, what are the core issues, irrespective of the parties? What are the issues of the farmers? What are the issues of the government? What are the issues of our country and agricultural economy? We must take note of as researchers, as professionals, right? And then, therefore, we should accordingly play out. And this debate, I said that it is a debate. Though I have put forth some of my views, but it is a debate so that all of us can learn, so that these core issues which are important for us as a nation, as a society, are addressed, right? Yes, Deepak, sir, from what we have studied in macroeconomics, farm loans are good for long term, but seeing the Indian conditions having a lot of marginal farmers, will it be a success on long term, right? If it stays after all these, right? All of these, right? Of course, if we resolve this long-term, this question of employment, because in India there is also this question of farming is not just an economic occupation, right? That someone is producing, like some firm produces, someone who produces mobile, he is not producing mobile for himself or herself. They are producing for market. Farmers, because directly their livelihood is connected, right? Either they may produce commercial crop or food crop. So, but it is directly linked to their livelihood. They produce for their livelihood. Either they want cash or they want food, or both. Most of the time both, right? So therefore market and all vagaries which will subject them to all kinds of uncertainties, risk, and make them vulnerable, right? So that is the challenge of addressing the farmers' question all over the world. All over, even in even Western countries. Even Western countries give lot of subsidies. In fact, India gives less subsidies than the Western countries. Are you aware of this, Deepak? This issue? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
This
sir.
is so. Why are they giving? If they are developed, if they have a good market, and they are all market-based economies, they claim they are all capitalist countries, fully developed capitalist countries. They subsidize their farmers in a big way. Why? Because food is important, farmers' livelihood is important, agriculture has to be looked after, right? So variety of reasons are there. So therefore, in the long run, yeah, efficiency and other things might help, consolidation that might happen. But till you reach that stage, there will be a lot of crises that you need to take care of, right? So in the long run, yeah, if everyone gets shifted, everything is based on just only market system, etc., then everyone will be playing by markets. But farmers cannot just play by market, because their livelihood is directly linked to their agriculture, at least for 86% of them, I would say. So therefore, long run, yes, things might be different. In the long run, we are all dead. So, but in the meanwhile, farmers are committing suicide in the short run itself, Deepak. So, how do we address them? How do we address them? Mukul, although this protest has been a spectacular display of organization and community cooperation, but in my view, they are asking wrong questions. As in academic circles, it's a common consensus that Punjab needs to get out of wheat and paddy cycle. Yeah, so yeah, that is one aspect of long-term impact. Long-term impact of the cropping pattern that was developed as a result of the earlier MSP and earlier market procurement system in Punjab, Haryana, Western UP. So therefore, they have gone in largely for wheat and paddy cycle, and which is also creating some kind of a ecological issue and some health issues also, right? Those cancer, etc. people say are also increasing there because of use of pesticides, etc. Right? Yeah. So that is an issue which is the result of the livelihood that was now the way we supported agriculture to support livelihood to ensure food security for our country. So in the long run, any system faces contradiction, right? No system remains stable and unchanged. They come up with various kinds of contradictions, right? So for example, groundwater depletion is there, stubble burning. These were all not issues which were not there. So, but they have come. So they are adding to the livelihoods. So, but what is happening? Wheat and paddy is there. Some extent, it has given them some kind of a good living in Punjab and Haryana. But now it is getting into all kinds of problems. So their livelihoods is again facing a newer challenge. Right. So therefore, we have to look at, therefore, how do we address the new challenge in terms of improving their livelihood? Because lot of them, though in Punjab there is diversification, lot of them also migrate, etc. But many of them depend on agriculture. Agriculture is a major source of income. So, but they will continue to depend on agriculture. Right? They will continue to depend on agriculture. So if not wheat and paddy, if they are creating problem, there are difficulties, but they may have to grow other crops also. So for that also you need some new system, etc. So therefore, newer agricultural development there would be one of diversification to overcome the problems and contradictions that we have faced. So that is how I see it, right? So nothing will remain unchanged. We are bound to face difficulties, right? Every institution, every system, contradictions will come, and when the contradictions come, so they will lead to newer thing, or we have to resolve it if they are not getting resolved, right? That is how I see your question. Deepak, sir, government has assured farmers of MSP contract farming laws are better suited for farmers and APMP laws benefiting farmers, but still they are agitating. Why, sir? No, government is assuring MSP, yeah, assuring, but they want a legal binding. And contract farming laws are there. They are not sure whether contract farming will really, will come in a big way and will really help resolve their challenges of good price, assured price. At least MSP is giving some assured price. Now, with the new laws, that MSP would get diluted. They're likely to get diluted. That is their fear. And if MSP goes, they will be fully at the mercy of the market vagaries, like they were earlier, right? Farmers are farming is a gamble in monsoon. So now the new slogan will be farming will be a gamble in market, possibly, right? So we don't know that might happen. So therefore they are saying that they hard won this MSP. Those earlier farming agitations were for MSP and were for APMC and procurement and such systems. Those new farmers movements of 80s and 90s enabled them to get those support. Now government in some way wants to weaken and take them back, right? That is the fear. So though government says that it will be there, right? It is like BSNL will be there, BSNL will be there. So foreign universities will come, our universities will be there. We will not dismantle. Right? Next to your own university, Harvard University will come. Where will you go? You will go to Kolhapur University or you will go to Harvard University if there is a next door Harvard University. Right? But farmers think that Harvard universities are costly. We cannot send our children. We want our universities. Right? So what will happen to our university? Will you close down? Will they survive if foreign universities come? Same question. Deepak, same question, right? Yeah. That's how,
Yes.
yeah, these are the issues. Yes, anyone wanting to, yeah, some of your questions are posing alternative views, but anybody also having any alternative view, I would be happy. Yes. Right, friends? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, good questions. Yeah, you should raise questions. We should debate. Right, that is my approach. I thank all of you for participating and raising these questions. Yeah, these are important and we must respond at IRMA. Of course, I am not saying that I have answers to all these problems or answers to all your questions. Whatever way I have understood, I also may be wrong. I am not sure. Right. So, but we must debate and discuss. At least that we must do. Right. In academics, in a democratic society, we must debate and discuss, even if we are wrong. So then that debate possibly will give us better clarity. Yeah, so that is what needs to be done. And therefore, even if certain sensational issues have sidetracked, but debate must happen. So we must come back to that. Government must come back to debate. Farmers must come back to debate, discuss. And then, because in a democracy, yes, ultimately, so they have to thrash out. Of course, alternative way is like what Maoists say, that no, we will agitate, we will overthrow the state. But these farmers are saying we are not terrorists, we are not Maoists. They are very clearly saying. So then, what is the way forward? The way forward is only debate, discuss, and then arrive at some way, right? Even if it is not possible to go to extreme, yeah, maybe some via media ultimately. So debate will help arrive. Debate will help arrive. Yeah, that is my take, friends. Yes, maybe we can close. Yeah, we have extended quite.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing this insight.
Ayush, are you there? So you want to close or?
Yes, sir, we can definitely close. This was huge enrichment to our understanding, sir, definitely.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So we are done then, Ayush?
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
can.
Thank you,
Thank
Ayush. Thank you all.